Brian Abelson and Michael Keller. Brian was a open news fellow at the New York Times working with James Robinson on news analytics, and now is at a data portal site called Enigma that Alex mentioned earlier today. And Michael Keller is a former student here who is now at Al Jazeera America working on the interactives desk. Guys, what was it?
Yeah, sure. Hi, yeah, so we're working on a project called NewsLynx with the Tau Center, and we'll, okay, right on. Yeah, sure. So NewsLynx is two different things. One is a suite of open source tools for doing online analytics, and this comes out of the work that I did at the Times, as well as one of our colleagues, Stan DeBrouwer, who worked on some stuff as an Open News Fellow at The Guardian. And this will sort of include three different facets of tools. Tools for collecting and archiving analytical data, for analyzing and exploring it, and then also a sort of front-end platform for visualizing this data and generating reports that you could give to your staff or to funders, et cetera.
But it's also a research project, so once we get a prototype of the platform, we're giving it to mostly nonprofit investigative-focused newsrooms to see how they use it, to see if it solves their problems, and see what they're doing currently in the field of kind of impact assessment and that type of qualitative as well as quantitative looks at their work. And from what we learned this morning, there's a lot of data out there, especially in metrics. So much so that you can make a really ugly word cloud about all the different companies that take in all this information and all the options a newsroom has. So we're certainly not looking to replicate any one of these. It'll have kind of a quantitative side to it, but there are people already out there doing a lot of that. So our approach is a little bit different.
Yeah, so NewsLynx is different in the sense, well, one, it's open source, but two, we're really looking to harmonize data from many different sources. So if you talk to someone like Annika at Shockbeat, who's doing this sort of work already, they will tell you that they spend a lot of their time going into one dashboard, a Google Analytics dashboard, and then they check their email for alerts from another dashboard, and then they go look at Bitly, and then they go look at Twitter, and they look at Facebook, and most of their work comprises collecting data from lots of different sources and putting it into one spreadsheet. So one thing that we're going to do is try to do that programmatically. We're going to try to take all these different sources of data and do the work out of the box to combine them and put them in a format that makes it easier to analyze. We're also very interested in this question of qualitative impact, and it was discussed in the first panel as a sort of impossible task. We think that sort of quote-unquote anecdata is just as important, if not more important, than quantitative data. And so we're hoping to create a framework for attaching anecdotal outcomes to stories in a way that allows you to make comparisons both across different articles and across different newsrooms. And one of the sort of tasks involved in this will be creating a sort of loose taxonomy of impact. What is the importance of a mention versus a citation versus a legislative change, and giving names and labels to all these things. We're also different in the sense that we're designing this primarily with the needs of nonprofit, investigative-oriented newsrooms in mind. And that's important because if you ask the market to solve these problems, they would not, because nonprofit organizations can't afford the sort of higher level, more expensive tools. So we're hoping to solve a problem by giving out free, useful tools.
And the other part of doing it is this kind of research project is, and working with these nonprofit investigative newsrooms, is they have this set series of stakeholders that are there that aren't kind of advertising dollars in many cases, but there are people that are interested either readers who give donations, or foundations, or just individual funders who are looking for something and who are looking for something out of that journalism, and want questions answered to see what the newsroom is doing. So the first part of what we're looking at is kind of what is kind of the state of how these newsrooms are thinking about their work. What are people doing already out there, and are there any kind of standardizations that we can look at? And then kind of aspirationally, like what would they ideally want that they think would really help them? Really save time is what a lot of what we've been hearing so far, but also things that they just can't see currently or have a really kind of analog way of keeping track of. Like, oh, I go into Google Alerts and I have this list and I write them down in this notebook. Kind of what are those pain points that they would really love to get rid of, and how could a platform help with that? And then once we kind of spread it across these multiple organizations, what are their commonalities? Are people defining impact in kind of the same ways? Are there patterns of stories that are most impactful that they see? And we'll be writing that up at the end of our research at the beginning of next year in a white paper.
So we sort of have an initial sketch of what the actual software component of this will look like. One of the things that's component is something that, as I mentioned, Stan DeBrouwer worked on called Pollster, and what it will do is give you a time series of social media shares for any given article. This is something that currently to get you would have to pay a lot for to one of these sort of social analytics platforms. We'll also be integrating with existing analytics providers like Google Analytics and possibly others like Chartbeat. One thing that I think we've realized and didn't really know from the start that's very important, especially for smaller nonprofit news organizations, is picking up all the different times that they're mentioned in other sources, or even more importantly, that their work is republished. I know that ProPublica has built tools to figure out when their stories, which are all come with a Creative Commons license, are republished by many different newsrooms. Other nonprofit news organizations do this, but they don't have the tools or the ability to track every time their stories are republished. As I mentioned before, we're also going to integrate this idea of a qualitative tagging system so that you can look at both the quantitative and qualitative impact of a story. And then on top of this, one of the things that these organizations are asked to do a lot is submit a report at the end of a grant or at the end of a fiscal year about what their impact was, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of help them generate these in a more seamless fashion.
So what we've done so far, we have a survey out. We're still collecting responses if you want to say how your newsroom is working. We have kind of initial data ingestion framework up. We have some wireframes that are preliminary still. These are kind of our next steps as we're going, and we'll hopefully have kind of a beta product to launch midsummer, and then about 6 months of observation. And if you wanted to help us out, our survey is up at newslynx.org/impact survey, and you can get in touch with us at contact@newslynx.org.